Afternoon, everyone. It's just after 3 o'clock right now. Thank you for joining us for the RGGI Stakeholder Advisory Group meeting. We'll get started in just a few minutes. I'll place the room on mute and we'll be started momentarily. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to this hybrid meeting on Nyserda's proposed 2023 amendment to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Operating Plan. My name is Dr. Joan Kennedy. I work in Office of Communication Services, Bureau of Public Outreach at New York State DEC. I'm very pleased to serve as moderator for today's meeting on behalf of Nyserda. Nyserda's purpose today is to provide an overview for stakeholders of the 2023 Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Operating Plan Amendment, which outlines planned investments of New York's Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative proceeds over the coming years. The draft 2022 Operating Plan Amendment was presented to stakeholders for comment in December of 2021 and was approved by Nyserda's board in January 2022. Subsequently, there was a mid-cycle planning update where Nyserda compiled a 2022 operating plan amendment revised, which was presented to stakeholders for comment in May 2022. And which was approved by Nyserda's board in June 2022. The 2022 operating plan was then compiled based on Nyserda board approval. This document that we're going over today represents the draft 2023 operating plan amendment and provides program descriptions and funding levels through March of 2026. Building from that plan, Nyserda will provide the funding assumptions and overview of the budget and programs included in the proposed revisions, answer stakeholder questions about the proposed revisions, and most importantly, begin the process of taking written comments and verbal comments on the proposed updated amendment. Next slide, please. Before beginning, I'd like to briefly go over some housekeeping details for this afternoon's meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Please know that the microphones in the room are extremely sensitive and will pick up and transmit any noise in this room to the remote audience, including whispered side conversations, shuffling papers, and other small noises. We ask that you are mindful of this and keep noises to a minimum. This meeting is a hybrid meeting, which means it includes both online participation and a live audience here in the room. We will take first questions or comments from our online audience. We ask those of you online to use the Q&A function as indicated on the slide to submit either questions or comments. I will pose your questions to staff, but in the interest of time, I will not read comments aloud. Comments submitted through the Q&A function will be recorded and treated as written comments. Once those questions are responded to, we will invite members of our live audience to this room who wish to ask a question or make a comment to come up to the microphone in the front of the room and make your comment or ask your question. Again, all comments will be posted on Nyserda's website with the final operating plan amendment after it's approved by Nyserda's board in early 2023. This meeting will be available on the Nyserda website typically within 4 business days after the event, as will the presentation. If you experience technical issues during this meeting, you can contact Kelly Gormley at nyserda.ny.gov. Let me just spell her name, K-E.
There's actually, Karen Fusco is actually going to be covering that.
Oh, I'm
That was
sorry.
a last minute swap out.
Thank you. So it would be Karen Fusco, and that is on the slide. Next slide, please. With those housekeeping details out of the way, I'm pleased to invite opening remarks from Nyserda President and Chief Executive Officer Doreen Harris, and then from Department of Environmental Conservation Deputy Commissioner for Climate, Air, and Energy, Jared Snyder, representing DEC Commissioner Basil Segos. President Harris.
Yes, thank you, Joan, and good afternoon and welcome everyone. Certainly whether you're here in Nyserda's Albany office or virtually, we appreciate you coming together today as we discuss updates to the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative Operating Plan. Certainly, New York State is moving forward with changing its energy landscape to meet our nation-leading climate goals and ultimately achieve economy-wide decarbonization. And certainly, our work proceeds in earnest across our decarbonization strategies, of which RGGI is a critical element. As you all know, RGGI serves to not only reduce emissions from electric generation in the region, but also is an important funding source for investments in energy efficiency, renewable energy, and carbon abatement technologies, and guided by our annual operating plan. And so I'm pleased we've come together to review our 2023 program planning presentation. The initiatives we are proposing in this RGGI operating plan amendment will ensure that these investments advance the goals established by the Climate Act while reducing emissions and ensuring benefits to disadvantaged communities across the state as the Climate Act mandates. So with that said, I'm happy to be here today with the Nyserda and DEC teams to provide an overview of what's proposed for RGGI proceeds over the next 3 fiscal years. And I also look forward specifically to your input so we can put forward a sound plan that demonstrates the best use of these critical investments for New Yorkers. And so to move that discussion forward, I am going to hand things off to DEC Deputy Commissioner Jared Snyder. But before I do that, I would be remiss if I did not note that this will be Jared's final appearance at this meeting, as he will be retiring later this month. So Jared, I know I speak on behalf of so many colleagues and friends when I say that you will be greatly missed, not just at this meeting, but far beyond. Your contributions to environmental policy and environmental quality across New York have been so significant and impactful, Jared. So we thank you for all you've done on behalf of our state, and we wish you all the best as you begin an exciting new chapter in your life. So I will just have to pause and say thank you.
Well, thank you.
It's over to you.
Yes, thanks so much, Doreen, for the kind thoughts. Personally, it's been great having Nyserda as a partner, over the past 15 years on RGGI and many, many other matters. I can't keep track of them all, but, most recently it's been developing the scoping plan to meet the requirements of the Climate Act, as you noted, the nation leading climate law that we're going to be implementing, or DEC will be continuing to implement with Nyserda and other agencies next year. So thanks to Nyserda for producing a draft operating plan that once again furthers the state's clean energy and climate goals, this time consistent with the Climate Act. In particular, I'm pleased this draft plan will expand investment in disadvantaged communities, meeting and exceeding the requirements of the Climate Act, as we'll hear in the presentation. Next year should be a very busy year for RGGI as the participating states move forward with program review. And through that process, DEC and Nyserda will seek to align the RGGI cap and trajectory with the Climate Act and the scoping plan. So as always, stakeholder input is very important in that program review process. So stay tuned for opportunities to participate in that process and provide input. So with that, let me hand it back to you, Joan.
Thank you, President Harris and Deputy Commissioner Snyder. Next slide, please. So I will take a moment to review the agenda. Today, we will be looking at the funding assumptions, a review of the proposed budgets and proposed programs. We will hear about progress on addressing disadvantaged communities goals. There will be an opportunity for discussion, and we will wrap up with next steps. For those of you on the virtual component, we remind you to please submit your questions and comments by writing them in the Q&A. Next slide, please. I will hand the microphone to Pam Poisson at Nyserda, Chief Financial Officer, to review funding assumptions and provide an overview of proposed program budgets. Pam?
Thank you, Joan. Hello, greetings. And if we could go to the next slide, please, let me just briefly review our funding assumptions. For the current year, as is our convention, we update for the latest auction prices available at the time that this plan is compiled and posted. So that is a total of $12.78, which represents the results of the two RGGI auctions up through, but not including the latest one, and then the $11.85 allowance estimated as per below. Now looking ahead, that $11.85 in turn is the value that we apply for the next 3 fiscal years. And that assumes future auction prices that were informed by a look back of the last 6 auctions. That starting point coincides with the release by RGGI states of a preliminary timeline for conducting the 3rd program review. So it's data-based using historical information and intentionally conservative as per our past precedent. If we look forward to the next slide, you can see how those assumed prices for planning purposes actually translate into the revenues that will then be programmed. So you can see at the top the number of allowances that we have established. That is then applied with the allowance price, to derive total RGGI auction proceeds. Of note, the interest earnings results from timing differences that may arise simply between the revenue receipt and when those expenditures are applied. And as always, those are assumed to be very conservatively invested. With the recent rise in interest rates and signals that may continue, you see that translating to slightly higher interest earnings than what we've seen in recent years. That translates all into the total revenues on the bottom line that are projections that we apply for planning purposes. They could, of course, vary over time, but we do believe that these are reasonable based on past experience. So with that as a basis, then I'll cover just one more slide as we think about how we translate those proceeds, expected proceeds, into budgets. So we will quickly, one more slide, please. We will continue forward with some foundational budgeting concepts. The first is the multi-year operating plan approach, looking at the 3 years ahead of us. We continue to plan to have commitments that are in line with the projected revenue at the end of each fiscal year end. In other words, don't get ahead of ourselves, but also make sure that we are appropriately allocating the funds to do the work that's contemplated. There are two transfers that carry forward based on previous decisions. The first is the planned transfer to the Clean Energy Fund. That will be $22 million annually up through fiscal year 25, then stepping down to $19.8 million, which will ultimately fulfill the $250 million commitment that was made when designing the Clean Energy Fund. This program budget will also include planned transfers of $20 million annually to LIPA for energy efficiency and renewable energy programs, and stepping up to a $16 million transfer to the Green Jobs Green New York Fund, which is an important vehicle for low-cost financing for energy efficiency and electrification measures consistent with the aims of the RGGI program. Finally, of note, before I turn it over to Cheryl, I believe, for the program investment discussion, I wanted to just underscore that the program investments are very closely coordinated to ensure that the RGGI proceeds are applied in a manner that is both consistent with our stakeholder interests, such as those of you on the call today, and also aligned to amplify and boost the impact of related efforts that may be funded by other sources, such as the Clean Energy Fund. So not duplicative, but looking to really leverage and pool for optimum effectiveness. Thank you very much. And Joan, I will go back to you as moderator.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Great. Next slide, please, and next slide after that. So again, just a refresher on what the priorities are for the RGGI funding. Most of all, we are adopting the same approach as previous year to programming the funds, specifically aligning with regulatory direction, including the Climate Act, and then focusing on strategies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The focus is on commercially available technologies, building state capacity for long-term carbon reduction. We want to empower New York State communities to transition to cleaner energy. We want to build an inclusive clean energy economy that grows jobs and entrepreneurship. And we are creating innovative financing to increase adoption of clean energy and energy abatement technologies. With that, go to the next slide, please. This is the breakdown by category of kind of building on what Pam described for the current fiscal year and the 3-year planning horizon by category. In renewable energy, we're supporting statewide support for New York Sun, community heat pumps, and the support of agrovoltaics. We're supporting energy efficiency, including building electrification, with a focus on residential and multifamily housing, with priorities to low and moderate incomes and continued support of schools in disadvantaged communities. In community clean energy, we are focused on community engagement and workforce development. As Pam noted, we continue to support the Clean Energy Fund as planned. And in directed, that includes not only the previously mentioned Green Jobs Green New York funds, but also funding to match contributions for federal funding opportunities. This allows us to increase the impact of RGGI funding by having it available to match with federal funds. I'm now going to hand it off to Max Joel, Assistant Director for New York Sun, to go through the new or expanded renewable energy programs. Max.
Thank you. Good afternoon. The New York Sun statewide customer incentive investment will expand incentives made available to non-SPC.
Next slide, please.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So the New York Sun statewide customer incentives would make incentives available to non-SPC paying customers who are not eligible for a Clean Energy Fund funding. They will predominantly target New York City public schools and public buildings served by the New York Power Authority. Upstate customers served by municipal utilities will also be eligible for the funding. For agrivoltaics, I believe I'll turn it back to Pam.
Sure, thanks. So just a quick note here, I think as many of us likely follow, there is an opportunity as we work on renewable energy development to complement renewable energy and have it live very much in coexistence with agriculture in the state. That's something that New York State has always been very proud of and succeeds well And so as we look to further find efficiencies in the development and delivery of clean energy, there's an opportunity to partner with the New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets and potentially some higher education institutions to provide best practices around how they can have those two items complement one another. Notably, this has been seen in other states as a mechanism that can be very successful in helping family farms succeed, and also ultimately to deliver renewable energy back to disadvantaged communities. So a small pilot investment there to ensure that we're going down the right path. Next, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, and I believe, next slide, please. And now I'll introduce Adam Reuter, the Assistant Director of the Clean Transportation Program.
Thank you, Max, and thanks everyone for joining today. For the clean transportation investments under the Charge New York banner, we have three main areas. One is that we will be continuing our investment in the Drive Clean rebate, which is our program that offers up to $2,000 off the purchase price of an electric vehicle for New Yorkers, which has been funded with RGGI since its inception in 2017. We will also be launching a new level 2 charging station program in early 2023 that will be focused on workplace charging, charging in multifamily buildings, and charging at targeted public locations in disadvantaged communities. This is a rethinking of a previous program that we had run. And we're also going to be launching another round of our DC fast charge program that focuses on charging stations in urban areas where people are less likely to have access to home charging. And then finally, we are also developing a new program to expand EV use in more ways than just focusing on personal vehicle ownership, and looking at ways to connect electric vehicle use and with transit, and expanding the idea of transit, and getting people to and from public transportation, either through shared mobility or other means like that, using electric vehicles. So we hope to launch that program in 2023 as well, and more to come on the details of that program. So next up is Suzanne DeRoche, Vice President of Clean and Resilient Buildings.
Thanks, Adam. You can go to the next slide. Hi, everyone. In the next few slides, I'll describe the amendment, which proposes to allocate $20 million towards programs that will support the 2 million climate-friendly homes initiative. This initiative aims to achieve 2 million electrified and electrification-ready homes by 2030, and includes clean energy upgrades for more than 800,000 low to moderate income households. So the $20 million will be allocated across the following activities. The first one is Comfort Home, and the proposed funding will allow the Comfort Home pilot to continue to offer services across New York State beyond its current funding capacity. So Comfort Home provides homeowners with solutions to reduce heating and cooling energy use, as well as improve indoor air comfort by providing incentives and financing for air sealing, insulation, and/or window upgrades. The program prepares homes for electrification and facilitates optimized heat pump equipment selection and design. The second program that I'll focus on this slide is the Climate Action Consumer Awareness and Education. This amendment proposes an additional $5 million of the 20 to focus on expanding awareness and education efforts to increase knowledge of and the demand for efficient electrification. And that also includes air sealing, insulation, and efficient heat pumps, really to accelerate the adoption of these technologies. We can go to the next slide. Other programs that will help support the 2 million climate-friendly homes are our financing solutions. This funding will support research, analysis, piloting, and market testing of a subset of high-impact financing interventions that will help mobilize private capital in support of the outcomes of the 2 million climate-friendly homes initiative. These interventions will help make financing more available for electrification projects, as well as installing other measures to prepare the homes for electrification. The supply chain support funding allocation will bolster existing supply chain initiatives that address the specific challenges hindering the expansion of supply side support, both for weatherization and heat pump adoption. It will support the build out of a contractor infrastructure capable of delivering residential weatherization and heat pump installations at the scale required to meet our electrification goals. Two primary initiatives, Clean Heat Connect and Experience Clean Heat, will be amplified to deliver the necessary tools and resources to increase confidence around electrification measures and show the potential business opportunity for service providers, as well as educate technicians and contractors who touch homes every day. Next slide. An additional $105 million in proposed funding over the next 3 years will help fund home efficiency, weatherization, and electrification upgrades for low and moderate income customers through Empower Plus. This funding will help to maintain statewide access to fuel-neutral whole building electrification upgrades for low and moderate income customers. Funding high-efficiency electrification upgrades for qualifying customers for whom electrification can also improve energy affordability. Next slide. A proposed $20 million will enable Nyserda to support more multifamily buildings participating in the Low Carbon Capital Planning and Low Carbon Pathways programs, as you can see here. These programs enable more building electrification throughout the state by offering a 75% cost share for building and portfolio level energy studies. And those include an assessment of electrification and electrification ready measures, informing building owners about actionable steps that they can take to prepare their buildings for electrification. The program can then also provide incentives for building owners that install a package of projects resulting in the reduction of on-site carbon emissions. These are low carbon measure packages. The additional funding will help continue the service that these programs provide through 2035, including the anticipated steady demand for the program as a result of Local Law 97 in New York City. These investments will support electrification in both market rate and affordable multifamily housing. The new construction and challenges funding proposed this amendment proposes to continue and build upon the success of existing Nyserda initiatives. Those include the Buildings of Excellence program, the Carbon Challenges, and the Empire Building Challenge. These initiatives are competitive challenges that pursue exemplary design and high performance for new construction of buildings. Nyserda's investments provide funding to leverage design professionals and new technical solutions to create economically viable pathways for replicable approaches to removing emissions from existing commercial and industrial buildings, as well as the design and construction of new buildings, including affordable housing. Next slide. Heat pump technology has become a proven decarbonization solution, providing buildings with clean thermal energy for space heating, cooling, and domestic hot water. Existing heat pump programs to date have targeted customers on an individual building-by-building basis. But community heat pump systems use a network of pipes to share heating water among a cluster of buildings. This amendment proposes additional funding to continue and build upon the success of the program, developing viable pathways for community-scale district thermal networks. And lastly, climate resiliency. This proposed funding would support research and analysis to perform a climate risk assessment for clean energy and electrification assets and investment to help ensure they will remain durable over time. And as well, this funding will help with the integration of climate risk into relevant work streams. It includes the research and development of climate resiliency design guidelines in conjunction with DEC and the Office of General Services. This work will ensure that New York State begins to develop a clear roadmap for integrating climate risks as per the recently signed Executive Order 22. Next slide. So now I am passing it to John, I believe.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. Nyserda is leading an initiative to win a hydrogen hub from the DOE Hydrogen Hub's $9 billion funding opportunity. Winning would enable a minimum estimated $2.5 billion in non-state, non-ratepayer funding to be spent to help decarbonize hard-to-electrify sectors such as industrial decarbonization and heavy-duty trucking, which is a leading cause of air pollution, especially in disadvantaged communities. Alongside supporting the coordination with stakeholders and communities to ensure a successful hydrogen hub application, which is scored heavily on disadvantaged community participation, this proposed amendment would further support broader engagement with stakeholders on how hydrogen solutions can best solve problems in communities across the state. This proposed amendment would further fund additional capital to be used to support pre-development of projects in New York to prepare for our application and to further support projects that enable the achievement of the state's decarbonization goals. I will now turn it over to John Williams, Executive Vice President of Policy and Regulatory Affairs.
Okay, thanks, John, and good afternoon, everybody. Just to run through a couple of new initiatives that we are going to be putting forward in the amendment this year. First, starting with some scoping plan implementation research. Certainly, those who have been following the scoping plan development process at the Climate Action Council will note that there are really quite a significant number of initiatives spanning the economy that are going to need some technical analysis and other support and research to ensure that New York advances the best policies or programs as pursuant to those recommendations that the Climate Action Council is taking into consideration, and we will look to the final scoping plan before taking any action on those. But to ensure to make sure that New Yorkers are going to be able to realize the benefits coming from the decision making coming out of the Climate Action Council, we're looking to set aside some funds to help with ensuring some of those initiatives can be moving forward. And things like we might be looking at activities that may be supporting, say, the gas transition work, potentially looking to support any economy-wide activities, or looking at any sector-based policies and programs, as will potentially be found in the final scoping plan. Secondly, we are in a moment in New York and nationally when the federal government is going to be putting the clean energy and decarbonization agenda front and center. And what we need to make sure that we are doing in New York is that as federal grant programs are being made available, we want to make sure that New York is in a capability of capitalizing on any of those grant programs that advance our policy, advance the goals of the Climate Act, and can provide economic and other benefits to the state of New York. So what we are doing is looking to ensure that we can create those federal program match opportunities. Oftentimes those federal grants require the state to have matching funds to those programs or initiatives that they are putting on the table. And in order for New York to be able to, again, capitalize on those opportunities, we will be looking to RGGI funds as a partial means of ensuring that the state can pursue those opportunities as they would make sense, both ensuring the advancement of the RGGI portfolio, but also, again, as they are advancing the Climate Act. We don't have a ton of specifics on this right now. I will have to confess the federal agencies are periodically but continuously putting forward grant opportunities. And again, these funds will be able to make sure that we can meet those opportunities that make the best use of the RGGI funds and ensure the advancements of those goals. One thing that we are potentially looking at right now is in the form of a grid resilience program that DOE, the Department of Energy, has on the table. The way we would be looking at this is to see, like, how can we look at certain advanced technologies, help to ensure that our grid is able to absorb the level of renewable energy penetration that our statute requires and that our programs are currently putting into action. So that might be a, for instance, on how we would look for these RGGI funds to match those federal program opportunities. And we can go to the next slide. And I'm handing it over to Jason Dalton.
Jason, are you with us? There was just a request sent for you to unmute, if that's possible. Okay. Right. One last check. Do we have Jason Doling with us?
Okay. In the absence of Jason, why don't we just walk through these pretty quickly? So a couple of initiatives under the category of community clean energy. Clean energy workforce development. These will be funds that we will look to work with labor unions and potentially others on expanding training programs, particularly looking at those individuals that are in the conventional energy field, and given the changes we are looking at in our energy systems, we feel should be supported in looking for new opportunities in the clean energy space. This is developing curriculum and equipping training locations with the appropriate technologies so that those skills can be developed by those workers so they have a much smoother entree into clean energy activities. As we do with other workforce programs, these funds will help to focus on priority populations. Those may be formerly incarcerated, women, as well as individuals who are residents of disadvantaged communities and are also looking for career opportunities in the clean energy space. So these would be funds dedicated for that clean energy workforce development activity. Next slide. Also looking to ensure that the Clean Energy Hubs initiative that we are looking at can be implemented on a statewide basis. And what we want to ensure that all areas of the state have is an ability to build that local capacity, particularly within disadvantaged communities, to be able to better educate individuals who are looking for clean energy opportunities. And we want to make sure that we are doing it with the individuals who are participants and residents of those communities, right? So this is very much a stakeholder engagement, local stakeholder engagement activity. And what we are doing throughout the state is to create this network of hubs that will provide these outreach education services that will help low-income residents and small businesses within those disadvantaged communities be able to understand what their energy choices are and how they can be best informed and take access of programs that can help them realize their own clean energy outcomes. So next slide, please. And I think now I get to turn it over to Chris Cole to talk about our disadvantaged community goals.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. So, as you all know, advancing a just transition through this clean energy economy is a priority for Nyserda, right? So, it's a co-equal objective to our ambitious decarbonization goals, as we've been discussing today. And kind of in line with how Nyserda is addressing disadvantaged communities' opportunities throughout our overall portfolio, we're taking the same approach under RGGI. So really looking at ways for us to adapt our existing programs and strategies and look for other opportunities to ensure that we're driving benefits and other positive outcomes to disadvantaged communities. So we're doing this through a number of different initiatives, right? So we spoke a lot about the programmatic efforts that we're funding under RGGI today. But in addition to that, there's a host of engagements and capacity building that we're doing with local CBOs to ensure that we can bring kind of the voices and the needs of communities into our program planning efforts. So, as we're looking at the RGGI portfolio, this operating plan obviously builds upon the investments that we've made with the 2022 program, ensuring that we are focusing on disadvantaged communities. As a reminder, the allowance auction program regulations reflect the provision that disadvantaged communities should receive no less than 35% of the overall benefits on clean energy and energy efficiency programs with a goal of 40%. And so as we kind of look at the Nyserda portfolio, in particular, kind of the RGGI initiatives, as we're talking about today, you'll see kind of how we're kind of looking to incorporate kind of those objectives into our programmatic activities. So as we sit here today with this amendment, we're projecting that 42% of our post-2019 commitments are going to be providing benefits to disadvantaged communities. So, the important kind of focus here on post-2019 commitments, 2020 was when the Climate Act was officially in effect, right? So we're really kind of looking at kind of what have we done between January 1, 2020 and now to ensure we're benefiting disadvantaged communities. Next slide, please. So, when we look at RGGI funding commitments prior to the effective date of the Climate Act and compare them to where we are today, the chart on the screen provides this comparison, right? So commitments through 2019 had estimated that 23% of investments would be directly benefiting disadvantaged communities. With this current outplan amendment that we're discussing today, we are projecting that 42% of investments will be benefiting or otherwise impacting disadvantaged communities. Next slide. So as we've discussed a little bit today and as outlined in the operating plan amendment, these next two slides present the programs and the respective funding amounts that total the $515 million that we are projecting will be benefiting disadvantaged communities through the RGGI portfolio, starting with January 1 of 2020. So if you kind of look at the columns on the last two columns, we've kind of projected the estimated investments that are benefiting disadvantaged communities as well as low and moderate income residents through the programs that we've allocated funding through under RGGI. The column on the far right is kind of providing the projected estimate of those, the percentage estimate of those funds that are going to be benefiting disadvantaged communities or low and moderate income residents. As you can see, there's a broad range of opportunities that these investments are funding. So everything from increasing clean energy, access to clean energy solutions across multiple sectors, to supporting community engagement and capacity building, as John just mentioned earlier, at the local level. Next slide, please. And so this is a continuation of the breakdown of estimated investments by program area, and kind of at the bottom line, as you can see, post 2019 commitments through the RGGI portfolio, we've made $1.2 billion of commitments, and we're estimating that $515 million of those investments will be directly benefiting or impacting disadvantaged communities, bringing us to about 42% of the total RGGI portfolio post 2019. Next slide, please. So I think we'll transition to our discussion, and I'll turn it back over to Joan.
Thank you, Chris. So to briefly review our process again, I'd like to remind you that this meeting is a hybrid meeting, including both virtual participation and live audience here in the room. And because of this, we will first take questions from our virtual audience from the Q&A function as indicated on the earlier slide, where the online participants submit either questions or comments. As in the past, I will pose those questions to staff, but in the interest of time, I will not read the comments aloud. Once those questions are responded to, we will invite members of our live audience in this room who wish to ask a question or make a comment to come up to the microphone in the front of the room and make your comment or ask your question. Comments submitted through the Q&A function will be recorded and treated as written comments, as the comments made here on site. All comments will be posted on Nyserda's website with the final operating plan amendment after it's approved by Nyserda's board in early 2023. The recording of this meeting and the presentation will be available on the Nyserda website, typically within 4 business days after the event. So available sometime late next week. So let's see if we have any questions. And it looks like the first question is to me. So the question is 2 logistical questions. Could you please describe the process for submitting written comments? And so the first one would be, if you're online, if you could just write your question in the Q&A, and we will respond to it and submit if you want to submit a written comment, please put that also in the Q&A, and that will be recorded as your formal comment. And then the second way you can do it is that you can submit it in writing to the RGGI programs at nyserda.ny.gov. It will be on the last slide by close of business on January 6, 2023. The second half of the question, will the slide presentation be posted? Yes, it will be. And that will be posted shortly after the meeting. The second comment that I have here, I think, Suzanne, I'm going to ask you to respond to it, is multifamily planning program. Text says $25 million, but the presenter said $20 million. And that was submitted by Roger, excuse me, Roger, if I mispronounce your name, Kayaza.
Thank you. Yes, and yep. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I did respond within the chat, but the number is 25. So what was on the slide is the correct number.
Thank you. So sometimes taking in this much information, we all need time to think. And so again, I would like to encourage you to submit any further written comments, or if you have other thoughts you would like us to know, to the website that is on the slide, Regi Programs at nyserda.ny.gov by close of business on January 6th, 2023. And, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, so Connor Bambrick, Environmental Advocates NY. And I have
Would you mind coming up to the front of the room?
yeah, oh, because
There's a little yellow
Yeah,
spot.
I apologize.
that's a,
Running a hybrid meeting, we've got cameras working, so there's an X on the floor over there, and that's probably the best way, so we
Yes.
can hear you in the room, and then for the virtual participants as well.
It is right here. No, I apologize.
Oh, no,
I
that's
thought
okay.
you were part of the Nyserda.
thank you. So thanks everyone, first of all, for the amount of time you're dedicating to this and all the effort that you put into this. A question on the New York Sun initiative. Could that also then, I saw it applied to upstate municipal utilities. What about Long Island municipal utilities?
So this is Max Joel with the New York Sun program. This particular funding item does not apply to Long Island. There is still RGGI funding available from a previously approved item for projects, solar projects serving low to moderate income homeowners and affordable housing on the Long Island. But that is not as wide as a range of project types and incentives as will be covered for NYPA customers and upstate municipal customers under this particular item. That full range of RGGI funded New York Sun initiatives was previously available on Long Island for LIPA customers for a number of years, but it has been exhausted.
Thanks. And you did, just to be clear, you said for LIPA customers, but not for the municipal utilities?
Oh, for the, sorry, the municipal utilities on Long Island are also in that category of Long Island. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
On the community heat pump initiative, it was just noted in the description that it's building upon the success of the program. Are there any examples that we can point to that are success stories? Because I really like the opportunity to do that.
Hi, this is Suzanne. I'll take that question. So yes, we have been running procurement for the past couple of years. Happy to follow up with a website link, and especially to point you to the City of Troy, which is currently in design as we speak. So happy to provide, and I can put that in the chat, and we can get that over to you.
Thank you. On the clean energy workforce development application, I have a few questions here. The K through 12 career literacy programs, can we get a bit more details on what those would look like, how they would work?
Do we have Jason back?
You do, yep, happy to. So partly this will be done in conjunction with the Clean Green Schools Initiative, which was announced in the earlier part of the year. And we're still in the planning stages of really determining exactly what the K-12 support will look like. But a couple of key principles that will be embedded there. One is that the local community will really play a key role in determining what is important and useful to their schools. So there will be a high level of community engagement. The second is that we're intending to share best practices that are developed in one district with another. And thirdly, we are interested in continuing to work more and more closely with vocational schools, training providers, and organized labor. so that there are opportunities for how do I get more? And that could be in the earlier part of the K-12 summer learning programs. It could be mentorships with companies and with construction workers and sites, and then leading up to pre-apprentices or apprenticeships for those that are really able to go that path. So we're looking to have this be kind of one of the areas that we've historically not been able to do a whole lot within, so that we have more of a full continuum involved. And I'd be happy to follow up offline with anyone interested as well.
So for the folks that are online, the Albany room is actually muted right now, so we can't hear the question.
All right, I'll start over. So there's a little bit of confusion, maybe just on my end, between the description of the clean energy workforce development funds and what's included in Table 1. It says $45 million in the description. In Table 1, it looks as though over time it's 60+ million.
I can speak to that. I believe this is related to existing funding versus what's additive. I believe the 60 million is the total that is coming to the program, but the earlier amount was the additive figure. I can follow up with more clarity offline, breaking down that amount based on previous allocations, if that's helpful.
That would be, thank you. And then lastly, related to this area, in looking at the chart that measures out investments in disadvantaged communities, it suggests that 51% of these funds are expected to benefit disadvantaged communities. And so if I can just give you a further description as to how that is envisioned, and just going back to what Chris had presented earlier, speaking about co-design of programs, much like the Clean Energy Hubs is a good example of working with groups that have lived experiences. Is that anticipated to apply in this instance as well?
Yeah, Jason Doling, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. We're having a harder time hearing some of the question online. I think I captured it related to the percentage that's intended to support disadvantaged communities. So I think, as you mentioned, Chris had shared some of the overall programming percentages earlier. As it specifically relates to workforce, the predominant focus of those activities is directly to support underserved populations and residents of disadvantaged communities. So we would anticipate that as just a percentage of the program, it will far exceed the goal of 40%.
And then I guess the second part of that question is there going to be co-design opportunities for disadvantaged communities?
Yes, there definitely will be. Workforce is an area that I anticipate we will have a lot of interest in co-design. And as part of both the Clean Energy Hubs, the Clean Energy Collaborative, which will be announced in early 2023, which will be a broader opportunity for bringing stakeholders together on key working group topics. And then also with a new ability to directly engage and compensate organizations and individuals for their time, there will be. So this is one where I expect it will take more the lens of the regional clean energy hubs, where it was kind of a real deep engagement and sharing of information across the board. And so we will definitely be leveraging all those opportunities in the early to mid part of the new year.
Thank you. And then one final question around the assumption in terms of the price of the allowances. Most recent auction cleared at almost $13. Should that trajectory continue throughout the year, will it be an opportunity to possibly amend the spending plan, or are there specific programs that those surplus funds would be going to?
So there's, we are continually looking at the revenues, how that looks across all 3 years, Connor. Certainly if we do see allowance prices at a very elevated level, that provides us a degree of confidence that over the 3 years we can identify additional program plan funds. We will either make a proposal coming back to the stakeholders seeking some input on that. If it is an amendment to the operating plan, that again has to get to the board for decision-making process. We engaged that mid-year review in the middle of the year last year. So we'll take a look and see how things go. The estimates that we currently use really are for program planning purposes. So to the degree that we are seeing some elevation in the RGGI allowance, we'll see if it really has an impact on the 3-year plan and certainly come back. As we see, we have seen some volatility in the allowance price. So the one thing that we are trying to ensure that we're doing that as we're taking that long-term look, that we're not, necessarily reacting to every change at every auction outcome, and try to take that longer-term view. But certainly, if we do see something, we will be back with some program proposals.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And we have your contact information.
Yeah, I know.
Do we have anyone else from the public? I have a couple more online comments. So I would like to just, John, I think this is for you. RGGI funding should not be used for hydrogen hubs, especially technology that combusts hydrogen, which emits more NOx and NOx than natural gas, as recently demonstrated by NYPA's pilot project. Hydrogen hubs with high volumes of storage or any use of combustion should not be allocated to disadvantaged communities at all, or RGGI funds will be used to exacerbate New York's health inequity. And this was submitted by Daniel Chu from New York City EJA.
And yeah, thank you. And Daniel, first of all, thank you for your engagement. And as I think you're aware, we've been engaging with a number of stakeholders for quite some time now, and we'll continue to do so and continue to ask you for your continued engagement and commentary. None of our proposed investing would, of course, go against any of the CLCPA framework, the Climate Action Council, or any of the other related work and its proposals for how the state should decarbonize and look after and support disadvantaged communities in a just transition. And so to your point, and I'll reiterate perhaps, indeed, the combustion of hydrogen does produce NOx. NOx is known to have negative health impacts, and that is obviously something, therefore, that we all need to address when thinking about where and how hydrogen can be used as part of the decarbonization of the state. So we look forward to following up with you and others over the coming months and years, frankly, on this topic.
So it appears that we have no further questions. I would like to just remind you to submit your written comments to the email that is on the slide, reggieprograms@nyserda.ny.gov, by close of business on January 6, 2023. The operating plan amendment will be provided to Nyserda's Board of Directors for consideration at the January 25th meeting. I want to thank all of our presenters today, the panelists who answered the questions, the public who showed up, and especially all the stakeholders who signed on or made comments or asked to participate, asking questions and providing comments. On behalf of DEC and Nyserda staff, have a safe and happy holiday season and new year. And thank you.